So I have Lauren Howard and Jessie Peters with me today. We are all fractional CMOs in spaces that are pretty similar to each other. So I'll have you all introduce yourselves. But Lauren, why don't you go first and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'm Lauren. I am a fractional CMO in the climate tech space, and I work with companies primarily in renewable energy tech and carbon capture to help them go to market. I generally work with startups and early stage companies, and I help them translate their technical messaging to something that lay people and investors can understand.
Jessie, how about you?
Sure. So, Jessie Peters here. I founded Peak Potential Marketing about 2 years ago to help out some friends in the electric utility solution space, which really translates to companies that have innovative, cool technology that they want to sell to electric and gas utilities to help kind of modernize our electric grid. And started out again just doing a couple white papers off the side of my desk, a couple sheets of collateral, and have grown the firm working with some partners and friends in the industry to provide full commercialization for companies a lot like the ones Lauren referenced, where they have seed funding, Series A, Series B, have a really cool product, but just need a little bit of help telling the story so that it lands in what is a particularly complex buying cycle.
And I am a fractional CMO primarily in the water space. So I service companies that are mostly engineering founded or engineering led, like both of you, but these are companies serving utilities or other companies themselves, right? So, it is B2B, but we're not addressing necessarily the end user themselves. I started by being a B2B marketer and in sales in the consumer tech space, and then kind of fell into water, partially owning and running a water tech company for about 10 years. And, all of a sudden here we are. So I feel like my background is pretty good to help out these companies, in terms of some of them are a little more mature. There's a lot of multi-generational family businesses in the water space, but many of them find themselves in the position of never really having dipped their toe into the marketing pool before, other than just some kind of like minimum viable marketing tactics. So all of us kind of have something similar in common. These are similar niches and conditions and stuff like that. What have you all seen in terms of the stage your companies are at? I mean, I know like fundraising wise, they're at similar stages, but do any of us have situations where we've come in and the companies have been doing some sort of marketing before? Or are you often the first one kind of escorting them in? Jessie?
Yeah. I love this question, and my answer is not without a little controversy. So, no, I say this from a place of love, but one of the things I see most often is companies need to generate revenue, right? For their leadership, for their investors. And so, one of the first things that a lot of the companies I work with have done is they've gone out and they've hired, depending on their size, anywhere from one business development rep to 5 sales leaders. It can vary, but they've done all of that without marketing. And as these sales leaders get into the field, they have conversations with prospects. They might have a flagship account, and everybody wants something a little bit different, right? In our industry, we say every utility is a snowflake. I think you both can probably say that too. That's not unique to us. And so what happens is the marketing strategy is a little bit all over the board, right? Because this week there's recency bias toward we need to put out a white paper, and actually it's video, right? And the topics on these things really vary. And so when I come in, one of the things that I see a lot, right, is there is no real strategy. We're playing popcorn with our messaging. Messaging may pivot entirely on like a 90 or a 180-day cycle. And so step one is actually talking to everyone in the company, getting their perspective, what's working, what's not working, what trends they see in the industry, and then actually trying to find the common thread in that. And that starts to lay the foundation for a strategy. We build a strategy. Doesn't mean that if there's an emergency, we won't deviate to get that piece of collateral they need. But by and large, we start to build out what the messaging is going to look like, with the understanding we got to keep at it for more than 90 days. And usually once we've completed that process, we get buy-in from that sales team. Sales and marketing are starting to work hand in hand. We start to see the fruits of that labor. So that's the big one. Love my sales leaders, but they're not marketing leaders. So how can we come in and help them?
Lauren,
And
what
I
are you
see Lauren
seeing?
nodding.
Yeah. So I have similar experience as Jessie. And also just most recently, I've been working with a lot of founder-led brands that are really sort of in the product development stages still. And especially within climate tech, where the product investment just takes up so much time, just both in time and money early on. And the founders often are coming out of MIT. I'm here in the Boston area, so I'm working with a lot of folks that are scientists that are coming out of MIT, and the real issue is that they don't even understand what marketing is. So they might think that they are doing marketing. If you ask them, "Are you doing marketing?" They say, "Yes, we're doing marketing." But what does that actually mean? That's a challenge that I often run into, sort of like educating these very, very smart people that there might be something that they don't understand about something that is actually pretty easy to understand for most lay people, but marketing is a science of its own. And getting these very educated founders to understand that marketing is its own science and art and that they need to outsource it is probably one of the things that I run into most often. I think the other thing that I am seeing is that with budgets being so constrained right now, founders of early stage startups are putting all their money into their product development and R&D, and they're not setting aside any money for marketing. And then they come up to the edge of their budget and they don't really have anything to go to investors with in terms of generating that next round of funding.
It is one of the things I always say, and this kind of touches on what you had said, Lauren, about making things make sense to lay people. Is a lot of these guys, there is some left brain genius, right? That engineering analytical genius. Like, how do we translate that to right brain clarity, if you can call it that?
I was actually just on a call right before we jumped on, and I was talking to someone she's at Harvard Business School right now, finishing up an executive MBA. And everybody else on her team is out of MIT. And the conversation that she had with her product folks was what they had suggested was that the people reading the website should just be smarter.
Do run into so many founders who they've told me if people just see I don't need any help with marketing because if people just see my product, they're going to want to buy it. And my response is always, how are they going to see the product? And there are so many people who they think mostly marketing just means graphic design,
Yes.
particularly because I have a lot of, like I said, multi-generational family businesses. So people have kind of been doing it for a long time. And so they go, marketing, you can make my trade show booth or you can redesign my logo. And then, the conversation turns to, well, how are you going to get your leads? We already have all the leads. There's a lot of like exclusive territorial kind of distribution deals and stuff like that in my industry. And so they just think like, well, I get all the leads for Tennessee, for example. That's where I'm based out of. And I'm like, what if somebody Googles for the thing that you sell in Tennessee and you don't show up and a competitor does? They kind of hadn't thought of that and hadn't even ever thought of that being marketing. It seems like both of you all are talking to companies more on the startup side. Do you run into similar philosophies regarding marketing? Like, what do people think marketing is?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's trade show booths, there's the PowerPoint girl, there's just give me a one pager. Like there's this whole slew of what I would call tactics, right? That are not a strategy unless they're strung together in a way. And what I see, right, is pretty similar. And it's like, we just need that one silver bullet. And it's like, there's not going to be one silver bullet. I don't know, Lauren, what you think?
Yeah, yeah. So the calls, I have a lot of calls where the initial ask from folks is, we need help with our flyers. Our flyers don't work. And usually what that means is that the messaging's off, right? And that's generally where I don't think that that folks know how to articulate that without saying, we really have no idea like who we're selling this to and how. But the flyer being off is a symptom of that problem. The other thing that I run into a lot is companies have been pitching, maybe to just investors, maybe to government, and now they need to do community outreach. They need to have a commercial message, and they have a hard time going from that initial messaging into something that will translate to a new audience. So that's something I see quite a bit.
Yeah, I think one thing I would ask, like anybody who ends up hearing any of this content, I had a wonderful product marketer who reinforced the jobs to be done
Mm.
methodology, and it's kind of like the next level of personas, but in the case like Lauren's talking about, it's really helpful because what would investors hire your product to do? What are the users hiring your product to do, right? What is the CEO versus the engineering lead hiring, and if you can build out those different jobs and how you speak to them, I think it can make a world of difference. But Paul, I am curious because your background's a little different than ours. Like you had a company, right? You co-led a company for years. Has your perspective on the need for marketing changed given that history?
Well, I think I can speak to it from like an acute experience perspective, like I can speak in a peer way to a lot of CEOs in my industry because I've done all the things that they're trying to do, from a marketing perspective and a lead gen perspective. Like, for example, I understand that you're literally paying for Google ads out of your pocket. And I've felt that because I've had to do it before. I know we've all felt that to some degree, but it is tough when you only have an agency background or something like that, or you only have an in-house marketing background to really like understand the pain of a marketing budget, any kind of budget, to be honest. But like, okay, we're going to pay for a print advertisement. Like, oh, I got to pay like $6,500 to put my company in this magazine. We could just keep that, or we could just, keep that several times and hire somebody or something. I think what I found is that I've been there before, so I am not going to be kind of like willy-nilly with budgets and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of CEOs understand that. Like, I'm not going to try and spend more money if we don't need to, and I'm going to actually try and do periodic checks to find extra budget when we can. Hey, we're just not using this app like we should. Let's cut it, or let's cut licenses, things like that. I think that maybe they've found that other folks haven't paid as much attention to. That's just the feedback I'm getting from some of my clients is like, seems like you're helping me run the company too, which I think
Yeah.
is appreciated. And I can't really turn that part of my mind off. So we're all fractionals, right? And one thing I think is interesting about the industry and the particular role that we're in is we also have to find leads for ourselves. Like, we're running a business in addition to helping all of these businesses. How have you found lead gen for yourself be similar or different to lead gen for your clients? Lauren?
That's a good question. So I think it is quite similar. Most of the accounts that I'm working with we're taking an account-based marketing approach. So we sort of already know who the, top 10, 20 accounts are that we want to sell to. And here, in the Boston area, working in climate tech, I'm lucky that I've got great sources of leads right here in my backyard with several incubators that we've got here. And those are the types of companies that I have on my short list as well. So it is quite similar. There's also a lot of overlap in terms of creating content that's going to resonate with those ICPs. So having that thought leadership mindset in terms of creating marketing content, I think is really important for both the companies that I work for and for my own business. And then similarly to my business and my client's business, a lot of it is timing and funding. The industry that I am in is really difficult to raise funds. And that is putting pressure on the accounts that I serve and then their end users as well. So if investors are not putting as much money into renewable energy or carbon capture these days, it's affecting a whole stream of companies that are affected by that lack of funding, in addition to the ending of the tax credits.
Jessie, what about you?
Yeah, I have a mentor who once I was talking to about making a job change, and he pulled me aside, and one of the things that he shared with me was we were at a conference. I think I'd presented on stage once or twice at this conference, and he was like, as you look to your next step in your career, whatever that may be, a lot of marketers go fully internal to their company, right? They might be doing a lot of the writing. They might actually be helping run media trainings or presentation prep, but they're not the ones getting on stage doing any of that themselves. And so you kind of become this hidden magician within a given company. And his advice to me was, whatever you do, don't let that happen to you, because you have a stage presence, you have a brand that you've established for yourself. And while that was, flattering to hear, it was really, really like it changed how I thought about the work that I do. And I think it speaks to what you said, Lauren, where I never want to be silent. I never want to be hidden. I cut my teeth in the
Yeah.
electric utility space. It's the only space that I've ever worked in. It's what I know. And so I got to find ways to share that, right? Because I could go and I could send 1,000 emails to 1,000 of these companies and maybe get one response if I'm lucky. But I'm realizing, for me, a lot like my companies, it's about establishing that credibility. And so I think the thing, like, I am trying to up my presence on LinkedIn and in conversations like this and still get on stage, because the quality of the leads that come in when you do that and you say something that resonates with a founder who has that challenge you're talking about is really, really helpful. So it's, I look at it that way, but then that translates to what I do with my clients too, right? Like, where can we get you talking on stage, right? Is it a HR conference? Is it a technical conference? What stage are the audience members going to hear what you have to say and think, oh, I'm going to actually pick up the phone and call them, or, oh, I'm going to go shake their hand after this presentation is done. And so there is a lot of parallel there.
A lot of founders might not have that experience of
Yeah.
comfort with getting on stage or being the voice, or if they really want to just be in the lab or, behind a screen, just getting the product done, and or working towards the next release of the product, and getting folks to understand the value of getting out there and communicating the value from the founder's perspective can be so powerful. And I feel like we don't see enough of those, real charismatic founders. Or, we do, but it's hard to get them. It can be hard to get them to actually put themselves out there.
So much about a sales cycle for any industry is about trust. It's hugely important in my industry. If a utility has known a company and worked with them for a long time,
Yeah.
they can turn around and say, "Hey, I'm selling this new product. I really think it'd be good for you." And they just go, "Okay." The sales cycle is super simple, and there's no way to really get yourself out there as a CMO other than to do what Jesse's describing and build that trust. So it is tough because, at least I've noticed in going on 2 years now with my practice, is time in seat really matters a lot. People seeing me talk about being a fractional CMO and helping other clients and then having referrals and things like that, it's all kind of snowballing, versus that first round of trying to drum up some leads for myself where I'm like, "Hey, I just started, but trust me, I can do this." Being able to point to my company and having run it and stuff like that before and taking it from here to here is really helpful. But if they haven't heard of my company, we're kind of back at square one. So yeah, building that trust and having someone reach out to you is huge.
I love trust. I think it can be such a buzzword, but when you lean into it, I think, yeah, for all of our niches, right, and the overlap between them, it is the key. So I have a client who wants to be the most trusted utility infrastructure partner. And they have led with that. They live it to their core. Everybody from their guys out in the field to the C-suite, like, trust and demonstration of leadership is what they really thrive on. And I got to tell you, the case studies that come out of that company are so cool because they live it, and like it actually helps to build momentum. So it is one where, whether it's for us personally or our clients, like, the more you lean into that, the more you build that credibility, the more you advertise it, I think it snowballs, but the sales cycle is still going to be the sales cycle.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Especially for early stage companies, that building that trust is really incremental, and getting those early POCs for startup and producing those case studies. I mean, that it can really be such a powerful tool for early stage companies in terms of marketing. Really, such a important part of the strategy is capturing those early successes so that you can convince that next bigger company, or deal to close, especially when you're first to market in new technology.
Can I ask some hot take questions right now?
Sure.
Go for it.
Okay. What's the biggest mistake you see companies in your industry making with marketing right now?
All right, I already said it, but I'm going to say it again because I believe it so thoroughly and it comes up constantly. Like, there is a silver bullet, right? It is, what is the one thing that I need to do that will get me deals tomorrow? And I think water's the same way. Honestly, climate tech for its own reason the same way. Like, that is not how the sales cycle works. Like, there's the trust we talked about. In a lot of cases, regulators get involved, right? Consumer advocates get
Yep.
involved. Budgets are set up to 5, 10 years in advance on certain things. So I would love to bust the myth that there's one thing you can do that's going to change everything for you tomorrow, because I actually think, again, it's just showing up over and over. And how do you
Yeah.
manage your budget and how do you manage your expectations so you can stick around long enough to do that?
Yeah.
What about you, Lauren?
Yeah. I mean, same. It's not planning, not having a true strategy, and not budgeting long term. When I talk to founders and, they might pay for some short term consulting or just a project to, update materials or, help them with a trade show. And then, they're sort of drained of the capital that they would use to put in place a sustained marketing program. So I think it's really looking at how much realistically can a company spend on marketing in terms of what they're looking to achieve from that, even if they're not in the phase yet of generating revenue. I still think early stage companies need to be budgeting for marketing over the course of years and not just spending willy-nilly when they happen to have some extra money laying around in a bank account.
How much should a company budget?
I mean, this is
Can
the
you
age
do
old.
marketing for free?
No, no.
Why?
I think word of mouth only gets you so far, right? Like, to me, free marketing is word of mouth. And it goes back to the entire conversation we've just had. One, you only know so many people and you can only shake so many hands in a day. Two, if you haven't thought about what the strategy is behind what you're saying and who that audience you're speaking to is, you're not gonna nail it. And three, again, the aspirations for, I think, all the companies we're talking about, right? In most cases, it's not, I want this one client and they're gonna keep me sustained forever. If that's the case, that's great. I don't know many companies that are like that. And so at a certain point, that word of mouth only takes you so far. You have to be searchable, you have to be findable, right? You have to be out in the industry, and even buying a plane ticket to just walk the floor at a trade show is going to cost you money. So
Yeah. And the other thing I think founders undervalue is their own time. We do marketing as professionals, and it's the thing that we have learned to do over the course of our 20 plus year careers. And someone who has been working in a physics lab or, a chemical lab or, within the utility space for all of their career, they don't understand how to do marketing. And their time is much better spent on the things that are going to drive the product forward and driving the business forward in other ways. And distracting the CEO or the founder or the CTO or whomever gets strapped with the marketing burden is taking that professional away from the job that they're really good at. And that costs the company money. So I think that this is why budgeting early and over the course of several years in the long run will be much more beneficial than trying to throw money at a marketing problem as it arises, because it will just create more distraction for the executives whose time would be better spent someplace else.
I think one last thing too, if you look at the industry as a whole, and I'm saying the industry, I think I mean all of ours, there is so much merger and acquisition activity. There are so many new companies being founded, right? There's so many companies actually exiting the market, right? Whether that's to go to a different geography or the founder, is no longer interested. If you have a Google search set for any of these niches, you're going to have hundreds of alerts a day. So how do you stand out in that noise?
It's a good point.
When do you think, so like we've said, many of our clients or companies in our industry are engineering led kind of by nature. Usually it's a product or some kind of proprietary solution, right? At what point do you fold in marketing into the mix?
Can I be a biased marketer and say day
Yeah.
one? Once that concept is fully formed, because I'm just gonna say, like, it might be fully formed for the engineer or the founder, whomever created it, but it probably makes sense to them and only them. So I would truly say the sooner the better. And I realize that might not be a full scale marketing team overnight. That might not even be a fractional CMO. But once you can get some help in there, I think you're setting yourself up again for that growth curve to just start rising a little bit earlier.
Yeah. And just to second that, one of the benefits of working fractionally, I think, is that we can come in and provide a high level strategy at a pretty low cost. And give a company sort of a outlook over the course of a few quarters, even if we're not working in an engaged capacity on a retainer, but we can come in and provide a strategy that's not just going to be, how do we get through this, one Google ad campaign? It's going to be, how do we best position the company to go from, the beginning of 2026 to the, next round of funding? How do we get there in a way that is sustainable for the business? So yeah, the earlier the better. Really, it's really not about how much money you're spending. It's really about having the strategy set so that when you get to certain milestones, you know how you're going to invest your money and you know where you're going to spend your founder's time in coming out from behind their desk to communicate about the business. What about you, Paul?
So I'm going to say early. I also know that I know so many founders that have just kind of sat and coded for a year until they even have like a thing that is tactile, So it's a really hard question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I think in water there's not tons of fundraising going on. I know there are with kind of the companies that you could categorize as cool tech. They tend to get a little bit of funding, but even then it's more like accelerators and like referral engines that they get looped into. There's not like, hey, we got a big bag of money, now we can expand our marketing team and stuff. So I think a lot of folks get caught in the rut of, we still do print advertising in water. They get caught in the rut of like, just put our company in the industry trade publication. That way everybody knows we're in business. If we stop doing it, they'll think that we went out of business. Go to trade shows, stuff like that. And then basically when I ran my company, the way I got us to spend money in digital marketing is I said, okay, if putting print advertisements in trade publications is a thing, we're going to buy a full page ad in every single one for a year and see how many people say, hey, I saw your ad in the Alabama Rural Water Association magazine and I'd love to purchase your product. And it was zero. So then the next year I said, okay, we're going to take all that budget and we're going to put it into digital. We're going to rebuild our website and we're going to start like a true SEO practice. And we did. And, a couple of years later, we're getting 8 to 10 MQLs a day through the website. And, it was pretty magical, but like we had to go, all right, well, let's like really kind of stress test the current logic and see if it works. So when, I don't really know, but like at some point you kind of hit your logical conclusion in terms of how you can do it for free.
For free.
Do marketing for free. Make friends in the industry, hire sales channel partners, stuff like that. That happens a lot in water. Yeah. You get a partner that'll kind of sell for you.
Yes, super powerful.
And you go to trade shows, and the more of those you get, it is a form of marketing. And you can just have like a minimum viable website and kind of get by. But you're going to hit a point where like you're just screaming into an echo chamber every month with your email newsletter because you have the same people that subscribe and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So at that point, you've got to do something a little more real marketing.
Yeah. And I actually just jumping on the channel partner thing, it can be so powerful. And we use a lot of these in the utility space as well. The thing I've realized is in most cases, those channel partners were not spun up just to sell your product, right? They are motivated to sell what actually moves, whether that's services, whether that's software, whether that's physical products. And with working with a lot of these firms, as well-intentioned as they are, again, they need to learn the product first to be able to sell it, and they need to see success selling it. And so I do think that there's sometimes we'll have a channel partner go sell it for us. We just got however many hundreds of salespeople. But again, unless you're feeding them and you're feeding their marketing teams the actual keys to do the job successfully, like it's not going to change anything overnight. And so also from an industry where we love our print media and we love our channel partners, there's, again, I still think the sooner the better. But again, what that marketing looks like at the first stage for every company is going to be a little different.
What's an unpopular opinion that you have about marketing in your industry? I can go first.
Go for it.
I've got one.
I don't know that it's unpopular, but I think it's overlooked. And oftentimes, Lauren, you referred to it earlier, but oftentimes we know who we want to sell to. And yet we also say, well, I don't know how we're going to get any more business, or I don't know where we're going to get more leads. Well, so what if you just actually proactively went out and tapped everyone on the shoulder and asked them if they wanted to buy your thing? And I think the industry got into a real big inbound phase where we want to build our marketing engines to have people come and talk to us, that we stopped doing cold outbound. And I've actually found cold outbound email and LinkedIn to be really powerful, because we pretty much know who the companies are in our industry and who the utilities are. So what if we just like went and reached out to them all? It's like a very unhypey idea, but it's also very simple. So like, let's just go ask everybody.
Totally agree. I think that's a really good perspective. Most people that are the potential buyers of any of the products that we're selling are not sitting, they're not out there in the internet consuming potential content from us where they would be, able to click on something. So unless you're catching them, on their like maybe once a month check of LinkedIn or at a trade show, it's really hard to do inbound marketing these days for these audiences. Even readership of trade pubs is way down. There's just so few opportunities to generate inbound leads in the sort of like early 2000s, mid 2000s method. My unpopular opinion is that the messaging is wrong. And this is a hard thing to tell a founder. Because it's sort of like the telling them their baby's ugly. But when you tell them, you're not going to be like, your value proposition is not strong enough, or people don't understand the value that your product provides. And they sort of like, the initial response is almost always, no, you just don't understand it. It's like the people that we're selling to do understand it. You don't understand it. But I have found that to be not the case many, many times.
I'm sitting here laughing because, again, the adages we all use are identical. Calling the baby ugly is something I probably say 6 times a week.
Yeah.
It is very true. I think mine is, and to keep it controversial and unpopular, some SEO folks are not going to be thrilled with me for this one, but I am so sick of buzzwords. The one that rises to the top of the list is AI or AIML. For me in the grid space, there's grid resiliency, there's grid reliability, and I get called out for being pedantic a lot, but let's know what these terms actually mean before we use them, because again, AI, to use my top of the list, everybody's got AI. Every solution, every software solution, right, is
Yeah.
AI. And if it's hardware, it actually speaks through the cloud to some AI. And in some cases, that is true. And those people should shout that from the rooftops. In other cases, I don't believe it's true. So already there's some distrust in the technology. And again, we're not thinking about our audience when we throw that around. Like, I can walk a trade show floor and everybody is selling AI, and that's great. But then I can go to the symposium happening in the conference room down the hall, and I kid you not, this has happened to me. I sit down and there's an AI for utilities conversation, and the audience was supposed to be utilities, but I was there eavesdropping because AI does fascinate me. And the conversation never got past, should we be allowed to use Chat GPT or not? So we are selling AI algorithms to, in some cases, utilities that aren't sure how or if they should be using Chat GPT. And like, whoo, we're missing the message there. So use buzzwords appropriately, but like a slew of them is not going to be the thing that gets you the trust or gets you the clients that come from it.
Yeah. The other thing I'll just throw in, Jessie, regarding the buzzwords is that like if you just looked at like the buzzword headlines, any number of products that are in our industry, it's like they almost all do exactly the same thing. And I can almost guarantee you they do not. And it's just that people are using the same words over and over again. And this is why messaging is so critical, because no one is really going to understand what you're doing if your messaging is just loaded with buzzwords and is not conveying the actual meaning of your solution.
Exactly.
At least in the water space, Jessie, to jump onto your point, I'm always wondering, like, what water utility worker thinks it's a good idea to have AI run our water distribution and treatment infrastructure? Like, we've all put in a math problem into Chat GPT and it's wrong.
Yeah.
So then you want to go like drink the water that AI made. It sounds like companies trying to message to investors almost, instead
Yeah.
of to the people that they're actually trying to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's like a joiner of all of our points here. It's like, who are we messaging to? Have we actually thought about the end user? all of those things that I think the marketing in that particular subspace is doing wrong. Is there I have kind of one more before we look forward here. Is there a marketing tactic in your industry that is overhyped, or a marketing tactic in general that is hyped, that is overhyped for your industry?
I will jump in because we've talked about it a lot. Ads, right? Yes, you want to show up when folks Google, or increasingly now we have AIO, right? SEO for AI. You want to show up when they put you into that Chat GPT or whatever platform they're using. That's great. With electric utilities, right? There are multiple people in the buying committee. And when I say multiple people, I probably should be saying multiple departments in a buying committee. Again, there's external factors here. Like, one ad is good to help generate a little brand awareness. It is not going to be the thing that gets the check signed at the end of the day. So you can spend money on it, but that is not where I think the bulk of your money should be going. I think we're not e-commerce. It's just very different for us. So how, again, can we be demonstrating trust? Can we be demonstrating thought leadership? Can we be standing on stage? Because those engagements that open the door for more communication are going to help you perform much better than an ad.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I would say same thing. I actually, as a marketer who's been working for 20 plus years, I actually have very little experience doing ad buying because it's never been something that's mission critical to the business. It's always something that I outsource to an expert, and it's always something that is really probably, like, if you do all the line items out, it's way at the bottom in terms of the investment. So yeah, it's not a place where I spend a lot of time or money as a marketing strategist. But I don't know that my customers necessarily feel that they should be spending money there. So I wouldn't know that it's overhyped. I think that if we're talking about marketing spend that's overhyped, I would say trade booths that are over designed and overdone. I think, you could spend 10,000 at a trade show or 100,000 at a trade show and probably get the same outcome. So that's an area where I think having a good strategy can really help you make the most of that investment.
I feel like I could talk about trade shows for a long time. The more people you bring to a trade show, your expenses as a company go up, in a, like, on a Richter scale
Oh yeah.
level.
Yes.
The more square footage you rent, same type of deal.
Mhm.
And I think, Lauren, you're probably right. Like, you could spend 10% of the budget you were gonna spend at a trade show and get the same outcome. It just makes you feel better because you go to a trade show once a year and you go, well, we had a good year last year because we got the 30 by 30 booth or whatever. But,
Yeah.
like, you just blew all that profit on the trade
Mm.
show. Phew, yeah. I've actually found
Well, I want to do a whole trade
go
show
ahead. Go ahead.
conversation. No,
All
no,
right.
you're good. I don't want to pull us off from the focus. I will say this is where I think I might be a little different. I love a trade show, and I don't go blow your money that you don't have. To be clear, I do think I've experienced, right, when you're a 10 by 10 in the back corner of a large hall and you don't see anyone new, or where you're a 20 by 20 or a 20 by 30 and you've actually invested and you're punching above your weight and you do see success. But two things I think that just booth size and decor amount don't help with. You got to have meetings before you
Yes.
go to that trade show, because then if you are that 10 by 10 in the back and that's all you can afford, you might actually see the same level of success.
Mhm.
But schedule those meetings, have those meetings. If you are going to invest in a booth, have a space for people to meet with you in your
Yes.
booth, because that's where your product is going to be. That's where your software is going to be. So I like a nice trade show booth, but that's not without a plan. That's not still without getting on stage so you can then invite people back to your booth. But I could talk about this all day, so I'm going to stop myself.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Jessie. I think, going back, circling full circle to channel partnerships, if you can get a partner and
Yes.
co-host a booth,
Yes.
that can be
Yes.
so beneficial, especially if that channel partner happens to be a bigger brand than you.
I do
Fully
think
agree.
location
Now
is
we're
super
aligned.
important.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Location is really important. And, as somebody who's gone to the same show, like, for the last 11 or 12 years, like the biggest show in our industry, and experimenting with location and stuff like that, it really matters.
Mhm.
I think back to every company being a snowflake, there are things that do work for some companies that don't work for others. So I would still encourage CMOs and CEOs out there to experiment. To your point on ads earlier, I have a client that is doing fantastic with Google Ads.
Mm.
Like the ROI is great and it's working fantastic for them. It's pretty dependable in terms of like the money we get back for ads. And I think a lot of that is due to the confusion that Google has brought to their results pages in the last year. Now it's filled with a lot more stuff.
Mhm.
And when you see an ad, you don't really know if it's an ad or not.
Yeah.
So at least in this particular niche that this client is in, it works great for them. So I would say always try something.
Are you doing more competitive ads or branded ads? What's generally the ad strategy that's working?
So it's a pretty tight campaign because there are some keywords that we'd like to build up to organically that we're just not there yet on. So we're buying those and we're really allowing Google to only stay within this very controlled scope. And we do a lot of negative keyword inputs
Huh.
saying like, hey, I saw you bid on that. Don't do that again. And staying on top of it so that it really is pretty tight to what we want those target keywords to be. And when we get people searching for those, it usually ends up being really high value leads because it's engineered projects. Those are exactly the type of leads we want.
Yeah.
So the ROI is really good for them in that regard. I would say for the founders out there that are turning on Google Ads that are using the default setting on everything, Google Ads can be really damaging because what
Yeah.
it's probably doing is buying ads for your brand search
Yeah.
because those convert really well.
Mm.
And, Google is kind of like a dog running around outside. Like
Yeah.
you've thrown like a stuffed squirrel enough in your house that it's going to bring you like a real squirrel and just bring it into the house and go, I did a good job. It's bringing you what converts, but it doesn't really know that that's not a thing that you need. So I would say consult with an expert on the ad stuff.
Definitely.
That's what I do. Even I'm not going to take the reins on somebody's ads campaign when they're putting a lot of money into it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Looking forward, how are you seeing the growth and investment in your industries, and how is that kind of bleeding into marketing?
I can speak to this a little bit. So, um, I just came out of like 3 weeks of conferences in the climate tech and hard tech spaces here in the Boston area. And there was so much discussion about availability of capital and the sort of reluctance for a lot of capital that's sort of just kind of sitting around to go into climate tech and renewables in a time when there's so much uncertainty within the geopolitical situation in the United States and abroad. And the sense is that this investment will happen. There's a lot of funds that have mandates to spend, but it's just sort of a question of to whom and when. A lot of what I'm hearing and seeing is that the number of companies that will be funded will be much fewer. And so, again, getting back to messaging and the importance of messaging, really nailing that early is going to dictate whether you're one of the companies that gets funded or does not. And also, I think in terms of marketing budgets, companies are concerned about where funding is coming from and when. And because of that, they want to make sure that they've got their product to the point where it's viable. So they're delaying marketing and they're spending less on marketing. But it can really have a negative impact if you play that scenario out where if you're not able to communicate the value, you might not get that funding regardless of where your product is.
Yeah. I will jump in and second a lot of that. I went to a really useful conversation here. I live in the DC area, and this was probably about a half year ago now, but it was just how messaging has shifted with the change of administration, right? And how a lot of the net zero and the carbon free and stuff that I think, Lauren, a lot of your folks talk about, a lot of utility sector folks talked about, became again about my new favorite buzzwords, resilience and reliability and security. And watching companies try to navigate that is and a funding landscape is really difficult. I think the other one that I would bring to the table, I alluded to this earlier, is there is so much merger and acquisition activity that as a marketer, I spend a lot of my day context switching or code switching between we're selling to our customers or we're selling to investors or we're looking to buy. And it's, what I'm seeing, right, is grid 101. There's the power generation, there's the really high voltage transmission, there's the lower voltage distribution, and then there's the use in the business or the home. And you could go way into that. But companies now, they used to have one real focus, maybe one or two. Now, even if they're not focusing on the full grid, they want to help multiple parts of that chain, right? Because multiple, like different areas are getting different funding, different amounts, and there's different interest, right? You throw data centers and EVs, all this stuff into the mix. Like the grid is the oldest system in the country, and it's fundamentally starting to change. And so watching companies try to have a technology stack that can compete in that has just created, like, sometimes it seems like a free for all. And I spend a lot of my day going, wait, why did this company buy that company? And why did they sell it? And sometimes it works out great, right? And sometimes you get these really cool solutions out of it. I've both lived and watched others live where, like, I don't know that it made sense. And I'm not sure what the due diligence was at the end of the day. So to keep hammering on messaging, right? Who are you talking to? What is the end objective? And where's the funding coming from? Because it is a crowded and chaotic space right now.
To that end, I would probably advise founders that in this kind of market climate, similar to how they tell you to like invest when the market's down,
Mhm.
if fewer companies will be funded and there's going to be market consolidation and exits and things like that, it's way more important to get yourself out in front now and have people know about you now. And the only way to do that is to, get an expert marketer in there to run the strategy. Is there anything else either of you need to vent about, or push, or kind of opine about 2026 and beyond about?
My question for both of you, right? I think we all see the like 2026 mega trends that everybody jumps on board with. Are you over them? Are you already thinking about your trends? Like, how do we talk about 2026 and when do we start?
Yeah. I mean, in marketing, like that's the one that we're just so sick of, right? And, how usable is AI actually going to be to a marketing department in 2026? I don't think tremendously. I mean, that's one that I would like to not talk about as much as I have to.
I do think on the automation side, you're probably right. I think on like the content creation and drafting things side, it's been really helpful to me, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like, oh, I'm displacing jobs as a result or
No.
anything like that. It's like, it's just helping me be more productive.
Yes.
And I'm, like many people, I'm a much better editor than I am starting
Mhm.
from the blank page. So
Mhm.
that has been really helpful. The more context I give my AI tools, the better. But I am already over the AI slop that we see all over the place. And, you know, Lauren, you've been hammering on this point, but it just makes unique messaging all that much more important right now because
Right.
everybody's got the M dashes and everybody's got the insights that are often too long that we're all providing to the social space or to our websites or whatever. So I'd like to see like mindful adoption of AI
Mhm.
in some way happen in 2026.
Yes, and long live the M dash. It can really be useful when applied correctly. I
I gotta
resent.
tell you, it breaks my heart every
Yes.
time I delete one because I used to write with them myself all the time, and now I can't.
Everybody that used to use them can't even do it anymore. So
No,
you got to
Stop
like
it, stop it.
no.
reinvent your communication methods.
All right, so 2026, maybe bring back the M dash appropriately.
Okay,
There we go.
I like
Resistance
it.
M dashes.
Well, this has been great. Why don't you tell people where they can find you? Lauren, you want to go first?
Sure, sure. So Arc Aligned Strategy is my website, but also LinkedIn is great. And yeah, so I'm Lauren Howard, Lauren617 on LinkedIn.
And Jessie Peters, I think I am /Jessie-Peters, so you can find me there. Jessie spelled with an I. And my website is peakpotentialmarketing.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much to you both. We're going to have to do this
Thanks, Paul.
again.
Thanks,
This is fun.
Paul. This was really great.